Today we are solving equations by factoring, and honestly, this isn't any different from what we've done before. There's just an extra step that we have to do at the end. So in example, actually, let's do example C first. Ignore the equal 0. This is the type of problem where you're looking for two numbers that multiply to give you -6, and those same numbers need to add up to -1. That would definitely be 2 and 3. Which one would need to be negative?
3.
The 3 would need to be negative. So this would factor into x plus 2, x minus 3, and then think about the fact that this said equals 0. The next step, if we were writing a proof, which we are not, don't freak out, I just said the word that makes you all freak out, but if we were writing a proof, after our next step, the reason would be zero product property. We are going to use the zero product property. So if you care about what it's called, that's what it's called. The zero product property basically says if you're multiplying two things together and getting 0 as an answer, one of those things must be equal to 0. So if you look up here, we have parentheses times parentheses equals 0. The only way for two things to be multiplied and get 0 as an answer is if one of those things equals 0. So if the first set of parentheses had to equal 0, what would x have to be so that x plus 2 was 0? What number plus 2 is 0? -2. One of our solutions is -2. Then we look at the other set of parentheses. If this set of parentheses had to equal 0, what number minus 3 would give us 0?
Sorry, what?
+3. 3 minus 3 would give us 0. The shortcut is you've got +2 in the parentheses, the opposite of that is -2. You've got -3 in the parentheses, the opposite of that is +3. But our two solutions are -2 and +3. Now let's look at B. We're kind of going backwards. X squared minus 25. How do you factor x squared minus 25? X squared minus means it's probably difference of two squares. So x plus 5, x minus 5. And now the extra step of solving. If the first set of parentheses had to equal 0, what number
-5
plus 5 would be 0? -5 plus 5 would be 0. For the other one, what number minus 5 would give us 0?
I think it's +5.
+5. Our two solutions are -5 and +5. If you wanted to write that as x equals positive or -5, you could, or you can write it out separately, x equals -5, x equals +5. All right. A is not a trinomial, and it's not an x squared minus. So we can't factor this the same way we did C or B, but what do x squared and x have in common? X squared and 2x. They both have x. X squared divided by x is x. 2x divided by x is 2. Okay, let's start with the easy one. If the parentheses had to equal 0,
-2.
x would have to be -2. This other one, it's easier than it looks. The red box needs to equal 0. So what does x have to be?
-1.
I want the red box to equal 0.
0?
0.
Jesus.
I love this class. So if you have a monomial in front of the parentheses, if you have an x or a 2x or a 5x or an anything x, one of those solutions is going to be 0. All right? I guess if I'm going to draw the line through, I should do that for all of these. Next example. What's different about example 2 compared to example 1? They don't equal 0. They equal something. When you see x squared and x, you need to get one side equal to 0 so that you can factor and solve. And your hint is that you want positive x squared. You want your first term to be positive. So if your biggest exponent is 2, you want that term to be positive. On the next example, if your biggest exponent is 3, you would want that one to be positive. So keep that in mind. You want to keep your biggest exponent term positive. So on example 2a, I'm going to subtract 6x on both sides. That will give me x squared minus 8x plus 16 equals 0. We would then factor, look for two numbers that multiply to give us 16. Those same numbers have to add up to negative 8. What numbers do this? Negative 4 and negative 4. So x minus 4 equals 0. What number minus 4 would give us 0?
Positive 4.
Positive 4. What number minus 4 would give us 0?
I'm pretty sure it's
Positive 4 again. So in this case, there's only one solution because x minus 4 and x minus 4 are exactly the same. You could write that as x minus 4 squared, but ultimately there's one solution. If you start with x squared, you have the possibility of up to 2 solutions. You can have only one solution, but usually you have 2 solutions. Okay, in B, the reason I put B in here is right now we have negative x squared. We do not want to have negative x squared, so I'm going to add x squared to both sides to give us x squared minus 13x plus 36 equals 0. Do we need to actually finish this example, or do you know what we would do next? You would factor and get the parentheses and then solve.
It's just the same thing.
It's just the same thing. We are going to do C because C is a little bit extra, as the kids these days say. We want to subtract 12 on both sides. We will end up with 2x squared plus 5x minus 12 equals 0. Do you see a problem? There's a 2 in front of the x squared. So we have to multiply that 2 times the negative 12. We are looking for two numbers that multiply to give us negative 24 and add up to 5. Now again, some of you can look at that and immediately know what that pair of numbers is. Personally, I can't. So I have to think about 1 times 24, that's not going to get me 5. 2 times 12, that's not going to get me 5. 3 times 8, 3 times 8, I could get 5 there. So negative 3 and positive 8. When there's a number in front of x squared, you can't just put those numbers into the parentheses. We have to factor by grouping. So 2x squared minus 3x plus 8x minus 12. Notice I'm completely ignoring the minus 0 or the equal 0 right now. I'm just leaving that until the end. Split this down the middle and factor by grouping. The first group has x in common. The second group has 4 in common. So my factored form is x plus 4 times 2x minus 3. Now I put the equals 0. One of my solutions is pretty easy. If I want x plus 4 to equal 0, what does x need to be? What's the opposite of 4? Negative 4. There's one of my solutions. The other solution, we're going to have to do a little bit of work. For this one, we would do 2x minus 3 equals 0, and then solve that equation. Add 3 to both sides, then divide both sides by 2. X would equal 3/2. So our solutions there are x equals negative 4 and x equals 3/2. We're going to do example 3b. First of all, get 0 on one side. Now, see how x to the third is our biggest exponent? That's the term that we want to keep positive. So I'll keep 3x to the third positive, subtract 15x squared from both sides, subtract 18x from both sides. So you should end up getting 3x to the third minus 15x squared minus 18x equals 0. Because this isn't x squared, I want you to think about, what do these three terms have in common? They all definitely have an x, but do these numbers have anything in common? We could divide everything by 3. 3x to the third divided by 3x would be x squared. Negative 15x squared divided by 3x would be negative 5x. Negative 18x divided by 3x would be negative 6. Now, ignore the 3x for right now and just focus on factoring this x squared minus 5x minus 6. So on your own, factor that. Pause the video. Once you factor the trinomial, don't forget that we had a 3x out in front. If 3x had to equal 0, one of our solutions would be 0, because 3 times 0 would give us 0. If x plus 1 had to equal 0, our solution would be negative 1. If x minus 6 had to equal 0, our solution would be positive 6. In this case, we started with x to the third, so we have the potential for 3 solutions. Whatever your largest exponent is, you have the potential for that many solutions. I see 4 terms, which means we're probably going to have to factor by grouping, but I'm also noticing that all of these terms have an x in common. So I'm going to first factor out an x. That will give me x to the third plus x squared minus 4x minus 4. Now, over here, I'm going to take this part, the x to the third plus x squared minus 4x minus 4, and factor by grouping. These first two have x squared in common. X to the third divided by x squared is x. X squared divided by x squared is 1. Negative 4x and negative 4 have negative 4 in common. So this thing factors to x squared minus 4 times x plus 1. Now I'm going to bring this back over here. Remember we had that x in front? Is everything fully factored? Do you see an x squared minus? And that 4 is a perfect squared? So that part is going to factor into x plus 2, x minus 2. We still have the x in front. We still have the x plus 1 at the end. There are 4 solutions here. X is going to give us the solution of 0. X plus 2 gives us a solution of negative 2. X minus 2 gives us a solution of 2. X plus 1 gives us a solution of negative 1. There are 4 solutions because we started originally with x to the fourth.